Hello, WCLM.
This is Joe Morrissey for Dr. Edloe.
Yeah, how you doing, Joe?
I'm fine, Doctor. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Cold enough out there for you today?
Let me tell you something. It is freezing out there. I don't know if I just walked inside, but it feels like it's 30 degrees colder than it was yesterday.
It is. It is. Take it. Well, not quite 30 degrees, but close to it. In fact, I went and I got my fur cap that I bought from Finland, and this cowboy coat I found out in San Francisco is only real good for cold weather like this, and we very seldom have days like this, so I put it on.
I imagine that you're all bundled up right there. We're doing this interview over the phone, but I imagine you're sitting in the studio, continued to be bundled up.
No, actually, the heat is going right good in here, so I put it on the side so I can feel real nice and warm when I go back outside.
All right.
Okay, well, I want to talk about a few things. We know you decided to resign and then run again. And so I think I know why you did that, because they were
Sure.
calling for your resignation. But you can elaborate.
Sure, let me tell you about it. It was real simple. Even though there was no precedence whatsoever to ever resign, I have immense faith and belief in the voters. And I said, okay, you know what I'll do? I'll resign, I'll step down, and then I will immediately run for that same office with two others and let the voters decide who they want. And that's exactly what I did. The voters of the 74th District know my body of work over the last 7.5 years. They know what I have done in the General Assembly. And so I'm very comfortable in letting them decide.
All right. Another thing now, you've been a Democrat. You're going to run as an independent, and I think, the last independent in the House, didn't he retire the last session?
That was Lacey Putney. He
Right.
actually was one of the longest-serving members of the House of Delegates for 50 years. But, Dr. Edloe, let me tell you how that came about. I would have run as a Democrat and getting ready to do it, did the normal Democratic primary. You have a firehouse primary. You have people go up and vote. But you know what they did? The party elite decided that in order to be able to vote in the primary, you had to have paid your fee and been a member of the local Democratic committee. And therefore, the winner won with only 24 votes. So both David Lambert and I said, listen, we're not going to be a part of this process, which even the Richmond Times-Dispatch said disenfranchised thousands of African-American voters. So the next day I went out, I collected 461 signatures and got my name on the ballot, and will be running as an independent. And the interesting thing now is it's very liberating. And, you're not controlled by party dictates. You vote your conscience. And the people in the 74th know that Joe, fights for the average Joe, the common man. And so I feel very comfortable running as an independent.
All right, so what I was getting at, though, now that you'll be an independent, how do you feel that will affect what you do in the House of Delegates?
Well, great question. First of all, 90% of what you do in the House of Delegates, if you're doing your job, is you're performing, you're doing constituent service. You're taking care of their problems. I take great pride that people in my district continually say to anybody they come in contact with, you call Joe or Joe's office up. Joe himself returns the call that day. I meet with the constituent. I'm out in Charles City County checking on their slurry top road, meet with Department of Transportation officials, get an agreement that they will do such and such, and then I follow it up. So 90% of my work is constituent service, and I don't think you're going to find a harder worker in the General Assembly.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I heard an ad this morning, and from some of the other campaigns that have gone on locally, people have been questioned about the bills that they've introduced, whether they passed or not, and what their bills were for. And I noticed your one of your opponents has a commercial out there and saying that none of the bills you've never had a bill pass in the last 4 years.
That couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, in fact, just last session, both Republican and I got together and worked on the same piece of legislation. My restorative justice bills, my environmental bills, have all passed. So it's just it doesn't make it makes no sense at all. Last year, there was too much nitrogen being put into the James River. I introduced legislation about point source introduction of nitrogen, and got the bill passed. Every single year, my legislation that is passed because I work with Republicans and Democrats, and we don't pass the bill because we're an RRD. We pass the bill because it's a good piece of legislation. So it's just an absolute false statement. And right now, I know both of my opponents. They don't say anything about what they're doing. They're just talking negative about me. I saw a Democratic ad brochure that went out the other day that just hit the mail today. On both sides, it's just attacks me, but doesn't say one thing about the other guy. Not one thing about what he's going to do. So let's look at my body of work, Dr. Edloe, and the voters that are the listening audience that are aware know the following: who has stood up on the floor of the House of Delegates and fought to get funding for mammograms for those women that can't afford it? Joe Morrissey. Who has continuously fought for automatic restoration of rights? Me. There's 200,000 children out there that didn't have Medicaid expansion. Who was leading the battle on the House floor? Joe Morrissey. If you're coming out of prison and you're trying to re-enter society, you want to get your license back, but you have thousands of dollars in fees. Who introduced legislation so that you could get your license, but still and have even though you couldn't pay it all at once? Me. Blighted homes that are an eyesore, I introduced legislation so municipalities can take receivership of it. So again and again and again, legislation that affects the average citizen. Joe Morrissey is leading the fight on the House floor.
All right. It's the top of the hour, WCLM 1450, Highland Springs, Richmond, Virginia, WCLM, the heart and soul of Richmond. And right now we have Delegate Joe Morrissey on the air. My next question, what do you see the major issue that is going to affect your district, your House district, the major issue or issues for your district?
Two things, and they're both related to health. One is expanding health care for particularly young children, who do not have it. And I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. The other one is lowering our costs for our senior citizens, lowering their health care costs. Now, let me tell you specifically what I want to do. Right now, because our Commonwealth has not fully embraced Obamacare like they should have, and because we're not getting dollars from Washington, D.C., we're losing about $5 million a day that otherwise could go to offset some of the healthcare costs that our senior citizens have to now absorb. If we can get expanded Medicaid in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we have about a $1.6 to $1.8 billion more coming into our coffers, our treasury in Virginia. What can that money do? It can lower the healthcare costs for our senior citizens. I'm going to work tirelessly on that. Additionally, I said I would come back to those young kids. I've got a 2-month-old, and if she needs health care, I'm going to get it for her no matter what it is. Other people aren't as blessed. I want them to have those same opportunities. I want the 200,000 young children that don't have coverage to have full coverage, just like my Kennedy has coverage. And that's what I'm going to work on as well.
Well, what do you state? I mean, as far as the children is concerned, we have the Federal Act as part of Medicaid, but what can the government do to the state government to increase enrollment? I know when Mark Warner was governor and Tim Kaine, they increased the number on the rolls a lot, and then We sort of had a drop back when McDonald was governor, and I don't know what the governor is doing right now because I'm not involved on an everyday, day-to-day basis in healthcare, but I haven't heard anything.
Every social service agency in the state, every CBC, every community service board, every individual that is receiving any type of assistance, whether it's from the Department of Social Services, from DMAS, whether it's a Medicaid waiver, everyone needs to know and be aware that they can sign up for insurance, whether it's in an exchange program or not. But here's the key. Some people think to themselves, oh, well, if all these people are signing up, obviously our costs go up. That's the fallacy. The true story is if people get insurance coverage, they will treat symptoms now early and not have the more serious ailment down the road. By example, tell me if this doesn't make sense. That individual who maybe has early onset of diabetes, maybe he's 52 years old, instead of allow him to go see a podiatrist now, pay the $100 for the podiatrist, instead of waiting until he gets so bad that he goes into the hospital and has more serious surgery, maybe even an amputation where they're talking now about a $50,000 procedure. Wouldn't it be better to spend the money ahead of time on preventive health care?
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've been listening to the show because I say that all the time, and it's not just with diabetes, with the foot, but I mean eye examination because diabetes is one of the leading cause of preventable blindness. You got the same thing with high blood pressure, with heart attack, stroke, dialysis, all these things. But, we'd rather nickel and dime rather than deal with the issues.
Spend the money up front and you will save money on the back end. Why would you, doctor, we do not want people to go into the hospital as their doctor of first choice. We want them to have a primary care physician so that when they have an ailment, they get it checked out initially. And you and I both know that the problems associated with heart disease can be, instead of dealing with a person who has a heart attack and is at MCV, how about dealing with a person much, much earlier with perhaps, as you just said, high blood pressure? Deal with it early. Let that person have a primary care physician that will deal with them, and we will save money in the long run. Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so we know Medicaid expansion is going to be a major thing for the state as a whole, but what else should the citizens of Virginia, and especially your district, be aware of when this session starts next week?
The following. Anybody who, we both to some degree have been in education. You've been a teacher all your life, doctor. I had the privilege of teaching high school government history and coaching wrestling, and I later taught law school in 3 different continents. I am a huge believer in putting money into pre-K education all the way up to 12. It breaks my heart when I look out there and I see that there are some children that have the advantages because of their zip code of availing them, their parents can avail them of a pre-K education. But another child, perhaps in Eastern Henrico County or Charles City County, that doesn't have that, come from that economic background, can't participate in pre-K, so he or she starts off behind other students. What do I want? I want every child, irrespective of the zip code, to have the same opportunity that my children will have. And that is, I'm not a Johnny-come-lately to that. I have been espousing that ever since I went into the House 7 years ago.
All right, Joe, anything you want to say in closing? I want to thank you, number one, for coming on, taking the time to call. It's amazing, some people can find me. When the governor was running, he could find me, but he can't find me now. But at least, you always been here. I know you were in the studio before. I was hoping you'd be here today, but I want you to get in more trouble with Mike, so thank you for calling.
Well, let me just say this. There's a lot of people that run for office, and when they're running, they visit that church for the first time. They may make a photo op appearance at a school. They may talk about doing charity. let's just cut to the chase. I don't visit a church once. I visited 5 and 6 times throughout my term. I go back. What's the problem? What can I do? I have visited every high school, middle school, and elementary school, and pre-K school, even reading them Dr. Seuss in my district several times. I go back, and I put my money where my mouth is. I said earlier, I'm blessed. I set up a scholarship with my own money, a $100,000 scholarship program for the high school district. And the key to getting the scholarship, every year I give 2 $1,000 scholarships out in every high school, is not the one with the highest GPA, a little bit different. I give the scholarship to the person who has exemplified improvement in those 4 years, who has pulled himself or herself up by the bootstrap and is now going on to a community college or maybe a 4-year college. And I also set up my own charitable foundation. So, Doctor, I put my money where my mouth is. Every kid that gets on honor roll gets a letter from me, and I'm constantly out in the community working to solve the problem. And I'm going to continue to do that if the folks reelect me.
All right. Well, thank you for calling, and, best wishes in the campaign. And, call us back next Thursday, okay?
I'll do it next Thursday, 2 days after the election, Doctor.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
All right. That was Delegate Joe Morrissey, one of the 3 candidates for the House seat in the special election, a seat that he now serves in. And now you heard him say why he did things the way he did it, and he talked about some of the issues, what he has done, got a chance to address one of the things brought up in one of his opponents' ad that he hadn't done anything, and he clearly pointed out the bills that he had helped pass and was a part of having passed in the General Assembly. Sorry none of you called in to ask him any questions, but like he said, he'll call back next Thursday, and we'll be able to talk again.